We're live. Hey, Ian. um, so yeah, this feels we're getting back in the saddle, live at 5 Segue style. Starting off with a banger. Yeah, we just dropped some donation links in there, and very happy for Mei-mei Berssenbrugge and Will Alexander to be joining us. Hopefully, I see Farnoosh Fati has chatted. Am I supposed to not be able to see everybody? Hopefully that has been remedied at this point. I think it is because Joe Taylor Sukowski has chatted, how are you in space? So yeah, before I get started introducing Mei-mei, just like to thank everyone for being here with us virtually and excited to be able to do this thing again. Cool. Ian, do you want to say anything before I get started?
Yeah, well, hi. Yeah, very excited. No, I don't really have anything to say. I'm very excited that we're doing this. I can't wait for this reading. Yeah, just Farnoosh, if anybody's curious about what Farnoosh was curious about, it's a different setup than if you haven't been to Segue in a while, than it used to be. So you should only see a few people. You should not see, if you're not seeing the faces of members of the audience, that's how this Zoom setup works. I think there were a few people who were confused about that. And yeah, I can't wait.
Awesome. Me neither. So I won't. This is this is me introducing Mei-mei Berssenbrugge. When I look at the night sky, I don't see stars, which is not to make a statement about the lights and pollution preventing a clear and visible sky in New York City. Though it is also not a statement about that, of course. But what I really want to say about not seeing stars is that maybe I see something like words now. Or I see the stars, but I see them like I would a tree in the backyard I don't have, or a sparrow in a bush, or a poem. Berssenbrugge's most recent volume has taught me to read the sky, not as a mere object of study, but as she puts it, and this is the extended quote, I wanted my book to express one unified ecosystem between the stars and Earth in order for our feelings and aspirations to extend their reach so that our actions might have greater possibility and effect through realizing our connectedness with others. This telecelestial reception with the world that is larger than the world we thought it was might be the core of her recent A Treatise on Stars. We could also think of it then as a treatise with stars, and it really is also a treatise. We could also think of it as a poetics featuring stars, not as subjects, but as co-writers, a prosymmetrical blend of the bending, truth-seeking flights of poetry mixed with a diligent and attentive empiricism. Though I would say it also develops or destroys the distinction between prose and verse, poetry and empiricism, into a vibrant and vibrating long line capable of departure and return within the same glimpse of a breath. As much as there is the slow contemplative tracing of thought and being throughout Berssenbrugge's poetry, there is also an unfiltered and intimate celebration of delight, surprise, and discovery. She is one of the few masters of the exclamation point. I think I counted 4 in her newest book, but you should go and do the math yourself. Maybe you will find even more. In Lux, she writes, woo, and that's the part with the exclamation point. A shooting star just dropped there onto snow, so I go over to it. A crystal has dropped on the snow, and there's light, a face in the stone. It's as if I'm looking up through the sky and things are very clear, and I'm coming up through the ice. I've been below all this time, and now I see stars. This passage also contains the departure and return I was indicating earlier. The speaker is in an energized state of exploration, which finds the self in the world, in the stars, in language as one. Thank you, Mei-mei Berssenbrugge, for giving and treating me to stars. Thank you for treating the language of stars and discovery and compassion as stars and as poetry. And thank you for the treat of poetry, which obscures and radiates as stars. Mei-mei Berssenbrugge was born in Beijing and grew up in Massachusetts. She is the author of 13 books of poetry, including Hello the Roses and I Love Artists, also including A Treatise on Stars, 2020, and a new edition of Empathy, originally 1988, were published this year by New Directions Press. The prior A Treatise on Stars, which I focused on in this introduction, received the Billingen Prize. Her collaborations include Endocrinology with Kiki Smith and Hiddenness with Richard Tuttle. She lives in northern New Mexico, where she is writing about the green matrix. Please join me in welcoming first Segue 2021 April-May series reader Mei-mei Berssenbrugge in a telecelestial, actually, because we're on Zoom. Applause.
Thank you for that really beautiful introduction, and hello everybody, and thank you Ian and Lizzie and Izzy and Sarah. Look forward to hearing Will's poetry. It's very emotional for me to read today, because I was thinking the first time I heard a year-in poetry reading, Anne Waldman, who I didn't know very well, invited me to come and hear Jackson McClough and Clark Coolidge. And that was how I began my friendship with Jackson. I'm sure I've read from every one of my books at an year-in reading. I'm going to try to make myself come on the screen. I'm going to read 3 poems. Okay. Well, later. That's going to be it. I'm going to read 3 poems from A Treatise on Stars, and the first is I'm here in New Mexico. The title is Jaguar, and it's in 4 parts. People around Abiquiu claim descent from the Pleiadians and their beloved animals. We've always known relatives from other places: Andromedans, Orionites, Zeta Reticulans, Sirians. Cosmic relations are expressed by our plaza. Also, in new homes, we align with winter and summer light. All around are invisible realities where contact may occur. Some hear coyotes speaking in computer beeps. Some entertain guests unaware. Owls, for example, have one song beyond the range of our hearing, interleaved with multi-dimensional information. The 4D projection of this song generates a star. I invite you to stand close tonight, looking up, while our heart frequencies entrain, and we experience heart cognition, a kind of analytic thought oriented around images with feeling. Associating memories attract light. Your memory becomes an informational flow accessed through pathways or stories others share with others that seem simple in daylight, though you may be traveling backward in time or forward by resonance into space. That may be the only way to communicate with some others. Where are you going? Where are you coming from? I'm going to the stone circle at the end of my land. I'm going to collect seeds from primroses on the road, to look at some land to buy, to visit my friend, visit my mother, crossing and recrossing arroyos and mesas create a dense web between beings and home. In the same way, the neural grid of an ecosystem continually adjusts to maintain, as light between the hearts of mother and daughter, or light back and forth from stars, maintains homeodynamics in space. Our desire for light, for consciousness, is pulled from the transcendent domain of potentia by the needs of environment, herself. When you were a baby, my friend painted the star beings who visited her as angels, kachinas, very beautiful snakes. She taught us to hold our connection with each other in a new geography that weaves stars with the ground. Milky Way courses overhead. Dark patches show against its foam like divinations. Earth is a node of intersections in our galaxy and beyond, receiving millions of tons of extraterrestrial material a year as cosmic dust, meteorites, asteroids breaking up to scatter their bacteria and splash ours back out. All life forms are in potential genetic exchange. Viruses transpose DNA between mosquitoes and humans, for example, or between plants and microorganisms from space. We symbiotically merge into more complex new species in order to stabilize Earth's self-organizing whole. I describe consciousness as Mother Earth and the intelligence that shapes it. It's like an image of the moon on two different television sets. The real moon exists in different space than our living room. When we go outside at night, I'm nervous. I'm afraid for the animals. I mix consciousness with time, confuse time with what could happen. I struggle for understanding beyond environmental fears and grief. Consciousness is like the live feed of a jaguar on two different video screens. The real jaguar is filmed in a rainforest, preparing her energies. Before, I knew what to look for at night. I no longer know. My fear offers new possibility, the way awareness can create. Two birds perch in a constellation tree with the same name. One eats star fruit, the other looks on. They're together, which we recognize, like the sun and moon. One shines out, one waits for light. Observing and observed universe are complementary aspects of their love. We've had a drought here in New Mexico and through a lot of the Southwest for, well, almost 20 years. About 10 years ago, Richard and I started to go to Maine for the summer. So I could get, so green became part of my vocabulary. And I wrote a poem in 4 parts about dolphins. It's called Singing. All day, I feel the approach of dolphins. Their thoughts are in my mind. When I swim, my cells attune to them, because oceans full of vibrations that transmit to water in my body. It's a repository of primordial data from space. All creatures in water can access the Akasha. Tones entering my cells transform into feeling, an awareness of two worlds at once. I send back my thought, picture, feeling, and together we form new vibrations of knowledge that had been dormant in me. They're here. I swim out of the cove toward them. So happy I hum, and their answering chorus reverberates across water. We know each other. One dolphin is still far below me. Her form takes shape as she rises silently in bright blue, motionless sunlit. Thank you for showing yourself, fulfilling a deep longing within my deep memory. I empty my mind and listen for her reply, which comes as waves of emotion. A cloud surrounds me. I expand into its stillness and receive tones conveying information very fast. They teach me to hum, to whistle, and sing. Sound amplifies my body across open water. Even their joyous play has this sensation of creating space, and when they sleep, stars augment their frequencies. We converse by mind cell helixes of image and feeling, cosmic legacy, cosmic extension imprint holographically on my heart neurons as dolphin empathy. There are sounds which can stop time, alter surroundings, or shift your dimension. Swimming, I lose my sense of place, even physicality, and connect with collective love. They teach me to join my aura with the cosmos by spiraling with me in sound star tetrahedrons and to love those with whom we merge. Then being is healing through innocence when the animal becomes the teacher. One dolphin swims toward me. I open telepathically and respond. I practice this method of reflection to contact life forms in other space who are trying, however they can, to meet us. Sirius radiates high frequencies to lighten the dark, denser planets. Dolphins travel to and from such a planet through diagrams like songs on ocean floors. They wish us to participate in overlighting the collectivity of souls in our galaxy and ally with them to access the space sister brotherhood through these planetary vortices. Dolphins catalyze starlight to refresh water on Earth. Transference between species is both cellular and holographic or geometric, for example. My friend's body is 3D in front and 4D in the back. She exists across dimensions while appearing so ordinary in her yellow shirt and blue slacks as we walk to the shore. Memory is vibratory like DNA, condensed light, she volunteers. You and I relate through our mutual past on Sirius, in Glastonbury, Santa Fe. So I repeat their joyous staccato syllables. I listen to podcasts of no singers and tune to high pitches the Pleiades use for propulsion into our atmosphere, using the star codes of dolphins. We've attributes in realities we're not aware of. Dolphins reside in these dimensions like dreams in oceans. They swim within magnetic streams of other entities, angels we've invented, others heavens, cyclic destiny. I glimpse one jump from its energy band, attracted by my friend's intense aura. He shows me Earth's sister planet, replicated by sound, as we co-created by singing, sitting in her yard, gazing at the ocean under pine trees. There are messages in clouds, in wavelets on granite, cicada and meadowlark calls. Space travelers materialize morphogenetically from local beauty and merge with us. They enable travel between time and stars by projecting tones just ahead of the consciousness of the person migrating. The way dolphins pass me so fast, I don't see the bubbles until they're far, out of sight. Wonder is in 5 parts, and it's back in New Mexico on the mesa where I live. One summer night, walking from our house after dinner, stars make the sky almost white. My awe is like blindness. Wonder exchanges for sight. Star by star comprises a multiplicity like thought, but quiet, too dense for any dark planet between. While single stars are a feature of the horizon at dusk, caught at the edge of the net of gems. Transparence hanging on its outer connectedness casts occurrence as accretion filling in of extravagant, euphoric blooming, then being a spirit and in matter is known here to there. I go home and tell my children to come out and look. The souls of my 2 children fly up like little birds into branches of the Milky Way, chatting with each other, naming constellations, comparing crystals and fire. They exclaim at similarities between what they see in the sky and on our land. So by wonder, they strengthen correspondence between sky and home. Earth is made from this alchemy of all children, human and animal, combined with our deep gratitude. I see his dark shape moving and shifting against night's screen of stars. My little girl reaches for his lighted silhouette. Human beings are thought upward and flown through by bright birds. We believe stars are spirits of very high frequency. We feel proud our animals come from stars so dense in meaning, close to sacrament. We describe passing time in stories about animals. Star movement is named for the seasonal migrations of deer, wolf, hummingbird, dolphin. And as animals, stars still walk among us. Our snake Olivia, for example, tells me there is no conflict between humans and rain because resource is all around us. A coyote loved night, and he loved to gaze at the stars. I noticed one star in Cassiopeia. I talked to her, and each night she grew brighter and closer until she came to life here as a corn snake, my friend. She looks like a dancer on tiptoe, stepping around pink star blossoms, surging up after rain. Constellations are experienced emotionally as this play of self through plant and animal symbols and values. A dream atmosphere flows. Everything represented is sacred. Being moves in accord, not of time. Returning from the Milky Way, she realized crystals had fallen from her bag and looked up. My story links a journey to sky with the creation of stars, in which place accommodates becoming. Chama River flows north-south to the horizon, then straight up through the Milky Way, like water moving beneath a riverbed that's dry. Abiquiu Mountain, El Rito Creek, coyote, snake, rainbow and rain, spider and hummingbird identify equivalent spiritual placements above, so wherever we go, there is company, nurture from every star in our regard. I start up to ask my birds to return home and find our land continuous with a starry sky, mapped as entities who set into motion occurrence here. Place awaits an imprint from this potential, even though starlight arriving now already happened. What happens is a depth of field, before and after drought, fire, storm, disruption. I move at high speed, but I'm still standing beside my house in the dark. To go there, I find the place on our mesa that correlates to their tree in the sky and leap up. Space stirs as star trilliums emerge through darkness like humus. I ask one blossom to please in the future renew these bonds between sky and my children, so they will always hold light in the minerals of their eyes. sun on its nightly underground journey weaves a black thread between white days on the cosmic loom, like a chord or resonance between new experience and meaning. The origin of stars expresses the underlying warp of this fabric. Summer solstice draws a diagonal across my floor, precession, weaving ground of informing spirit. So therefore, life is fundamental to stars. The reverse is well known. That's why I don't use a telescope, star charts, or glasses when I go out. I think of a place, I wait, then fly to my children. When the stargate is raised, there is a narrow door between sky and ground. But when I arrive, I find the sky solid. I can't break through to visit my starbirds and stand there wondering before dawn. Then sky vault lifts. Maybe I can slip through to find the Milky Way and see its blossoms. Then our sun appears in the crack and pushes through to the day. It's so bright, so hot, I step back and cover my eyes. I hear my mother calling. Thank you.
I hope you can hear the claps that are so loud that they're silent through Zoom. That was incredible. Thank you for reading those poems. We're going to slip into a little break now, about 5 minutes, where we'll have another chance to serenade. And then we'll come back for Ian to introduce Will Alexander. But yes, sound out in the chat. And thank you, Mei-mei, for treating us with that reading.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back from that exciting intermission. That was an amazing reading. Thank you. Mei-mei is having things like that. She'll be back in a minute. Thank you all for being here. This is so exciting. It was nice to see Pierre Joris in the chat for the opportunity to congratulate him on winning the Penn Ralph Manheim Award for translation. It's so exciting to see so many people here. I'm babbling a little, but this is great. So I have the honor of introducing Will Alexander. I just wanted to say, if you haven't chipped in the $5, that money goes straight to our readers. And you can do it via PayPal at Segue Foundation at verizon.net or Venmo at Segue-Foundation. I also just wanted to say that in addition to Tasso and I, there's 2 more people are making this happen who you're not seeing on your screens, but that is a huge shout out to Izzy Dow and Sarah O'Connell. And on that note, I am now going to introduce Will Alexander and into the reading task. So a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to James Sherry about Will Alexander's new book, The Combustion Cycle, probably trying to mooch a coffee off him. And I asked him, how it came out, and he said, I think it's his masterpiece. No, he said, I think it's his magnum opus. It's not a hard claim to accept. The book is more than 600 pages long, carrying a sustained engagement with thoughts and interrogations, vibes and bewilderments that have registered throughout Alexander's astonishing career. At the same time, contradictorily, it is a hard claim to accept because Alexander's work is so plural, so vibrant with incomparability, so evacuative of received schema and presumptive strategies that in some ways it seems a rejoinder to the narrowness of the concepts of both magnum and opus, as wide and differentiated as an overgrown field. Alexander's work is blessedly plentiful. He is the author of nearly 40 books, including The Stratospheric Canticles, The Sri Lankan Loxodrome, Sunrise and Armageddon, and most recently, The Combustion Cycle. His publishers form an index of people working without a net, from avant stalwarts turned iconic like New Directions and Sun and Moon, to presses that are today wrangling the bleeding edge of contemporary poetics into print like The Elephants. I think Alexander reveals something crucial to his thinking when, in a conversation with Harold Abramowitz collected in Colloquy at the Abyss, published by Insert Blanc Press, he says, "There are neglected ideas, neglected landscapes, neglected persons, neglected energies, which we need to bring to the foreground. We live in such a culture of fickleness that it is a continuous problem." I think of Will Alexander as perhaps the foremost activist against neglect working today. His is a profoundly various but never fickle intellect, embracing a view of history, ecology, and textuality that brooks no artificial divides, refuses to play along with categoric rules derived from salability and fad. This is to say he is an artist of the world, which sounds sort of like a platitude until you really consider how much truer this statement is of him than almost any other writer. His writing sings an infinite dissensus, a kinetic science of living with the dead and toward the eternal. If the most valuable thing we possess is our attention, Alexander's writing offers a full political economy of that value. I read somewhere once that ordinarily a tongue compensates for its deterritorialization through a reterritorialization in meaning. It sort of reminded me of Will Alexander, except that I think while he's interested in what the tongue does, he works to uncover radical new spaces for reterritorialization, some of them happily beyond meaning, which is an instructive strategy in a world whose destruction is ever getting hip to fugitivity. He writes, in a cannibal explains himself to himself, something eats us, something spontaneously deignites us and spirals us to the grave. In this sense, we are figments, complex phantoms who are fed upon by the vapor of mystery. The Combustion Cycle is a book comprised of 3 linked long poems set around the world and exploring the productive and destructive interrelation of ecology, shamanism, social caste, and other forces. At one point, Alexander writes, "I am the initiate's explosion, the primeval flaw, spell after indigenous spell. I therefore declare my wounds as emblems against bondage, against that which extols the significance of predeceased being. I exist as that interior gust that outlasts old uranium yields. No, certainly not a dogmatized cosmology, nor a drift that enfetters by moral extrinsics." So many of us are in awe of Will Alexander's achievement. I don't mean this as flattery. His writing has the unaccredited authority of the truest teachers, the power of the kind of deep knowledge that gets misdiagnosed as myth, the mysteriousness of prophecy and of beauty set on a rampage. So many of us feel joyfully that we have just begun to listen to him. To put first things last, Will Alexander is a poet, novelist, essayist, playwright, aphorist, short story writer, visual artist, pianist, and, according to Wikipedia, one-time box office workers for the LA Lakers. Born in 1948, he lives in Los Angeles, from where he joins us today. I need you please to go crazy, crazy, crazier. I am quite sure you are not going sufficiently crazy for Will Alexander.
For Segue Foundation, especially for my editor, James Sherry, who did a magnificent job on my combustion cycle. And I'd like to start reading from a book that was a prior book from Compression and Purity, which was published by City Lights in 2011, 10 or 11. And this is the first poem I'll read. If one believes oneself a stasis, there exists no seepage, no neural density or scar. One then saturates as ash, as pointless cannibal's lethargy, as dislodged ink from a podium or a treatise. One comes to know demobility as a craft, as an art which solders itself to specifics, yet to know one's non-sequestered through mundane advancement as doorway, or basic habit as speculation. I am speaking of chastisement or cross-referential superimposition. Within this condition, I am more like a crow from crucial underwater fires, a crucial underwater crow, neither Chinese nor Shinto, but of the Black dimensionality as hidden underwater mass, which persists by daring, which seems at the surface a purposeless kinetic or a pointless mandrel's infection. Saying such, I consider myself a reddish Shinto crow, then just as strongly a Black anathema crow, then just as quickly a sun-fed crow from snow-washed volcanoes. So I look to myself as winter, as inclement carrion monger, as flight through great electrical haze. I being blur who shapes the Empyrean, who invokes withdrawal, who instills in his forces stunning psychic transference. And from this particular volume of Compression and Purity, I'll read the title poem. In the fire of this fluidic jeopardy, diamonds uncoiled and reconstruct and recondense like adjudicated burins or telepathic moon forms, like psychic drafts and diacritics being pressured by conundrum and purity, compressed below the level of the gaunt reflecting metals. Diamonds, crushed and glinting pions, incessant suns in the petal for vapors, where the sun quakes by quanta, by powerful interior fractal. The singular diamond, like a juggler or a hawk, in condensed Mercator warrens, where signs ignite in the phosphenes. Like the slope of a comet at Sedna, or holographic combustion, compressed, burning the dialectic of the ice house. The ground as habitual day star, as aerolith, as perfect star in the phantoms, known as paroxenes, as repetitious pyroclastics, as lowered concentrations of void, being basalt by subductive infinity. Diamond as subduction, as a rata of mist under vapor. And these diamonds in my mind, not of the human blood soil of protracted avidity, but of black alchemical stresses, being wealth as random mountain ore, being poetic spurs, being strange supraphysical hallucinatory hives, which come down and retreat in the ethers like double-blinded mountains, or a halting circuitous heat from the Permian or Mississippian, not an avalanche of morals or a decided human predicate, but the predicate as primordial, as helium, as olivine, as hydrated minerals, as ferro ozone dosage. Compression then precocious with neon reversals and flaring, with dense and angular heightening, being a fabulous scarce, being monoxide in hearing, with the sun spun around and condensed by petrology. I was interested in Mei-mei's reading because of the heightening and the connectivity with our real surroundings. We're surrounded too much by distraction. But I was reading a interesting pop-up article the other day about space debris. And we're just surrounded by space debris. So we're going to have to use channel our electric charges from within in order to penetrate that debris and go beyond that debris, and to really connect with the heavens like the so-called ancients, which was like the Egyptians. They were receiving channels. So you find this in indigenous cultures where the receiving channels are as pure as possible, and one can connect with spaces that the Occident never really seems to conclude upon. It's more of a narrow psychological space where the neurology is I should say foregrounded or foreshortened, and we don't get a chance to really see who we are and connect with the whole of the universe that's surrounding us. And we're just cut off in this little space here that Mei-mei did a great job in opening us up to verbally. But I want to continue that with one of my poems. It's called A Nexus of Phantoms, which I've read before. It's from my New Directions volume some years ago. In a lorikeet cave, motions exist of disintegrated swans in a translocated lake brimming with harvested poisons, sealed by corruptive postmortems. Such swans, staggered by microbial reasoning, their aggressive nest, anatomical with anomaly, with drifts of strenuous incarnadine meanings, with a thirst which hurdles conspiratorial invasives, alive with coronal oceanics, open like a clouded trail of rendings. Analogous with the auks, the pelicans, the mergansers, perhaps with the petrels and the gannets, under the power of darted mocking orations. The swans, looking back on solemn blood perusal, like a form of death, breaking roses on the shore. It is the example of phonograms, of lost and compacted lenses, turning within a charismatic fall line, or an isoneff, or what an avian would announce in Greenland as a katabatic wind. The swans, like a haze of magnetism or implied gondola locations, where the scent of each lorikeet is consumed and brought to dazzling eclipse refulgence. In another foci, in another depth, their form self-challenged in a cloak of suns, their power de-revealed with 7 moons burning, reduced to 2 intense incendiary magnets. And these incendiary magnets, like a nexus of phantoms, scattered across a geometric optometry. I don't want to just read straight through, but the whole idea is to connect with language into regions that normally the Occident hasn't ascribed to. I mean, normally it's put into a literary package, but we want to talk about something outside of the literary, to get into spaces where the natural indigenous spirit begins to illuminate, self-illuminate, and begin to move into the universe that surrounds us. And we want to do this in terms of a kind of a grammar of telepathic grammar, which I found that poetry is really, really consumed by. And so this is how I work through like a lingual telepathy. But I wanted to share a little more telepathy with a part of a poem that it's called The Ghost Survivor. Body by Drosera, by pure calliope is referent as invaded mausoleum. The body then existing as standing cinder under threat, condensed, brought back to the soil as a sub-abandoned heresy, being a blue and carnivorous thought arrangement under an orange-white dust, next to a blank and vertigrous spinning house. And this spinning house, brazen with tarantulas and probing, with its suns post-imploding, with its macaws and adders as regressive suborders. The body in this haze as an apparitional ballast, a half-formed quaking, flowing through faceless compost arcana, calling out from jeopardous blindings, from disrupted falcons and armies, like salt without form, like general anthracite gone missing. You know, for me, like poetry is continuous, it's always moving. And the last book was mentioned about the combustion cycle, runs over 600 pages, but I put as much concentration and energy into very small poems, and which is just as fascinating for me. It's not size, but it's the quality of language. This is called a zodiacal instant. To coordinate tigers, to look into the bright domain of sullen deactivity, is to walk on threads, is to hallucinate Navamshas. And Navamshas, according is part from Indian astrology. And here's another. Vibration from the coast of India. One feels its harried anodyne vultures, its populace of rats, its vexing by bubonics. The fact that the body is eaten as vapor, as base invisibility, to be discarded, to be rinsed with carking polonium and lime. So they are basics intrinsically freed of themselves, of their dark extrinsic imperial patterns, as if the Holocaust body had never existed, never peaking at fruition, at claw or model or fabric. As to fate and its ultimate de-existence, there remains a galactic brewing formation, never weighed by the cells or by means measured, invented by an onerous grasping of sorghum or principle. I must admit this format is very awkward for me, but we're going to continue here with another poem that was actually activated on a public transport. The lines came to me while riding in a crowded public bus, which seems to be that the rays, the energy of poetry can rise above any surrounding. And if it could be like a concentration camp or a bus, like we're living in this general camp, it seems like we are on Earth, and poetry is a way to get through to the stars. It's difficult, more difficult than ever before, but you know, there was a recent supposed sighting, I don't know if this is quite correct, but this is recent sighting of a galaxy that was, I think, 57 with 30 zeros behind it. And I'm not quite correct on the actual measurement that I just announced, but this was a measurement of a supposedly one of the greatest, earliest galaxies that has ever been seen. But the new understanding of it was that it was a reflected space debris. And now I don't know how accurate I am on that, but it makes sense because of the fact that we're surrounded by this artificial environment, which I feel like poetry is able to cut through somehow psychophysically inside of the being. And so we wanted to use, I want to use poetry as a way of like a light that gets through, it's not personal, but it's transpersonal. And this poem is about my early struggles with the written art and going through some neurological difficulties at the time, neurological difficulties. And there was this transitional point where this poem helped me in a certain way heal that dilemma, because I felt like some kind of medicine coming up in my throat. And when I wrote the poem, it disappeared. And this is called Apprenticeship. And there's a quote from Octavio Paz called From Eagle to Sun. He says, between impulses and repentances, between advances and retreats. Here I am posing in a mirror of scratch paper sonnets. Sonnets as rare as a live Aegean rhino. Absorbing the cracklings of my craft, its riverine volcanoes, its spectacular lightning peninsulas, emitting plentiful creosote phantoms from an ironic blizzard of unsettled pleromas. Scouring through years of unrecognized pablums, of constant high arch rivalry with extinction, bringing up skulls of intensive discourse by the claws in one's mind, which seem to burn with a systemic reduction. One then suffers poetic scorching by debris, by inaugural timber which flashes, by friction which flares up and harries, by unrecognized Boltons collapsing in glass of initial intuitive neglect. As if one's fangs were fatally stifled by incipients, by verbal range war didactics, by territorial driftwood, by sudden and demonstrative detractions, awed by the diverse infernals of Treacle and Dante. One's youngish body stands devoured by reverential print trails, momentarily canceled by the loss of blasphemous nerves in upheaval, stung by demeaning neutralities, ravaged by a blank Sumatran solar psychosis, by a tasteless collision of rums in transition, by a conspiracy of obscured fertility by hubris. As one sucks in doubt from a wave of tumbling blister trees, there exists irradiations flecked with a gambled senectity, with indeterminate earthenware splinters, taking up from aboriginal density, a forge of Sumerian verbal signs, cooked with a tendency towards starfish hypnosis, towards psychic confrontational drainage, conducting one's friction in a territorial furnace of osmosis and ire. Yes, apprenticeship means scrawled in unremitting leper's mosaic, cringed in smoky interior cubicles, releasing various deliriums as if pointed under a blackened Oedipal star, with its dark, incapable tints, with its musical ruse of unspoken belladonna. Poetics, an imaginal flash of Russian chamber lilies, stretching under a blue marsupial sun like kaleidoscopic tumbleweed, fugaciously transfixed upon an anomalous totem of glints, upon rainy Buenos Aires transfusions, above the urinal coppers of a flaming polar star rise. Of course, kinetic, like magical malachite rivers flowing from moons, blowing through three-quarter summits of motionless anginas. I've looked only for the tonalities that scorch, which bring to my lips wave after wave of sensitivity by virulence. Yes, a merciless virulence viewed by a blue-black tornado of verbs, and a surge of flashing scorpion chatter, and a desiccated storm of inferential parallels and voltage, like a scattered igneous wind, coterminous with the bleeding and hiatus and the resumption of breath. Resolved by flashpoint edicts, by consumptive stellar limes, by curvature intense proto-Bretonian fatigue. Mixing magnets, juggling centripetal antibodies and infinities, cracking the smoke of pure rupestral fat magentas. Yes, hatcheries floating through acetylene corruption of protracted mental restraint, two splendiferous vistas mingled with inspirational roulette, its mysteriums always leaping like a grainy rash of scorching tarantellas, or leaky moon-spun allostolphas, as if speaking in irregular glaciological green Dutch. A phrenic seminar of fabricity, a reiteration of hendesyllabic agitation and stinging, a ferocious vacillation, explosive as random aggregational nodes. Mined by black consonantal dissection, its maximal priority forked at hypotactic inclusion, with isochronous internal procedure, with ratios, with phonic penetralia by distortion, primed by anomalous nuclear accent, by cadence composing syllables and compounds. Yes, poetics, its force jettisoned by hypotaxis, by paratactic coordination and fire. This is all poems that I do are leading towards other vistas. Everything is not celebrated as some kind of staunch internality, which fails to glisten outward. Everything connects to everything. So in other words, you just go from poem to poem, like moving from universe to universe, kind of like I'm thinking of his name, Andre Linde, the great cosmologist. I guess he's at Stanford, or was at Stanford, talked about the parallel universes, which I've taken to heart. And everything that I do is like a parallel universe to something else that I'm about to do. And so I go through this one motion that I think Einstein and Rosen talked about, Einstein-Rosen bridges between, universe to universe. And so this is where I'm at in movement. And all of the poems are sensing other poems. So, and that sensation is carried out throughout my entire writing existence, and everything leads to something else. And sometimes they don't seem to match on the surface, but they have a ground from which they all grow. And this is what I was very appreciative of having Mr. Sherry, James Sherry, edit my last book, The Combustion Cycle. We had this understanding of how things would work almost telepathically, which was very heartening, because the material was interesting for me as well, because I wrote it many years ago, but now we're putting it into context where it's still living. And you test language out. In other words, what I'm saying is you test language out. Sometimes you let it sit. You just don't rush it into print, as I think Borges once said, but I don't know what he meant by that. It's not maybe what I'm thinking. I think you should test the work out by letting it sit, by letting it not be ignored, but letting it rest so it can have its own voice, and let it test it out by having it endure its own silence. So with all that said, I'm going to attempt to read the first few pages of the henbane bird from the combustion cycle that we went over, James and I, by phone over some time, and turned out well, and I'm happy about that. But I'll attempt to emit this poem. This is from the combustion cycle, which is three pieces on planetary shamanism, planetary connectivity, viewed through the eyes of a hummingbird. The second poem is from an Angolan shaman, which is called On Solar Physiology. And the third one is viewed from an untouchable. This third part in the book is from an untouchable who resides in India, of course. And they were all, the untouchables were all African inspired, ultimately. And you can go into it is once you get a chance to take a look at the book. But this is and shamanism is not just a geographical act, but it's an act of concern. I concern it is a raising up through consciousness into what Mei-mei was talking about, the stars. And we're not isolated with that, but we're talking about a circularity between the earth and the stars. So this is the first poem is called Concerning the Henbane Bird, and it's the voice of the second largest hummingbird on earth, the Andean hill star. And there's one in Chile that's a little larger than the Andean hill star, but for some reason I was able to see the hill star, the second largest hill star, fly. It was a special on some broadcast, but I actually saw the bird fly, and I never forgot it. And so it stayed with me, and I will start with it's in his voice. It says, poison, mystification by poison? No, but life as seminal cladistics, not prone to involuntary slumber or to the eye of measurable destruction, but the equidistant barriers surmounted as movement through centripetal transparency, like a flask of mirrors as centigrade in rotation. I exist as incessant cyclical cylindrical magenta inside my black vertiginous eye, never ceasing to vibrate, so that I am diaphanous, conspicuous, less given to accessible opalescence or distortion by skiography, as I hover inside the Andes as the fuel of an interior lightning subspecies, as an arc, as a sun on a tremorous ruby, not being subject to tribes or genera or toxins. Being the shamanistic hill star, I am nevertheless subject to an iridescent shrillness, to a faultless hurricane taxonomy, being the flight that is vaporous, cleansed, and undividable as transfusion. My molecules, ghost, my genetics, and abstentia. Of the avians, I am the pre-existing hill star, not collapsed into form. I am obscure and proto-endemic as voltage, like a sun minus saffron as weight, aligned with the first Vulcanian satellites, rising from ghostly eruption. They are three in number, never subject to calendrical zones, to continental weight. I am sunless, according to the scribes who've pored over texts in Chaldea, who've negated various weights of salt. According to sound by inverse rotation, according to mountain chains, according to various beasts before gravity was founded as law. A law implied and imploded its various dimensions of surcease, making me sullen and untoward, climatological and various form. Therefore, I merge and cease to merge with manifestation and its ripeness. Could one call my wing beats aloof, my presence, three suspended suns, anterior to shining, anterior to promulgation as mask, as anterior to the quavering of hawks? One thinks of titans whose glory is translucent, whose voids are akin to weightless hovering funnels. And this is not to condone a monotheistic sacrifice body, but to fully engage a transcendental seepage as a swan emitting sounds whose fundamental gift is disorder, whose zone revolves as darkened mental largesse, to engage a living no longer embrangled by outcomes or collapse. What informs me can never be classified as edict, as bound by circular drachmae. Yet I exist as dark interior spinning gale, as a mirage in an avalanche of portals. These portals which equate and cease to equate, the ruins which dazzle the breathing by geographic isolation, by cataclysmic landforms. For instance, Proterozoic glacial blindings, whirring about an inclement carbon like a glowing centaur in a primeval water field. This primeval water field, mnemonic before existing, before the core of intangible ethers has transmuted me, I fly in advance of neurological infinity. Before rocks are the velocity of diamonds. Vectors exist before me, instabilities, atoms which exist by re-erosion, by purely seismic lithos, which implicates a prior solar osmosis. And because of this solar osmosis, I float, I inundate foci by broken solar connective, which haunts the nectar across a river of sage, being light which seeps from greenish ocular mist, seeping from my shrillness, from my stunning interior drainage, as if my dialectic were a simple extrinsic, organic, a winged, blazing Hebrew. I would never contemplate chondrites by provoking the void which antedates matter. If such were the case, one could speak of a cured thin bill, of large eyes retracted between shoulders. One could speak of my family as Trotilidae, with my sharply printed talons, with my feathers firm, adherent to one another, removed from the magic of a subgenetic plumage. If visible, I would consider myself incarnadine, my blood alive and indestructible with salt, describing myself with an echo of avians. Say, the pyramidal sapphire wing, the green-backed fire crown, the plain-bellied emerald, or perhaps the purple-throated mountain gem, or the black-throated mango. I could speak of the train bearers, the heliothrix, the star throats. You see, I cease to be concerned about the explosive use of oxygen, about the width of my bronchi, about darting melancholia, imbibing a belly of anthropods, flying in rapid spiral movements. And that isolate warfare, that gulf of isolate gems, I could speak of black eumelanin or certain types of phylomelanins, and I would find myself in bloodless whirls of scholarly anti-frothing. Because I exist in absentia, I could post-exist in a razo, or as a Juan Fernandez hummingbird alive in a common singing ground, by means of solar fuel, by means of aboriginal mating, with my ant's instinct collected at a flawless depth of anthracites. I could go on. By the way, this is the first time I really read the book. And normally my practice is not to read anything I write after I've written it, but to let it just flow as it flows, so I can remain open to new lingual experience. That allows a certain kind of a freshness. It's like you come up on the world you never saw before. And so I'm continuing to write after this book. But in other words, you're not letting your prior creation stop you from inventing to create some new kind of flow, new kind of oxygen in the lingual blood, so that you begin to grow invisibly. And this is my, I wouldn't say a formula, but my technique for continuous movement. Always movement, always language is movement. And as you know, that the sky spins all the time. The world spins, the earth spins, the sky spins, the galaxy spins. It's all simultaneous. Now they work on different time scales, but we're all working in terms of movement. I think this is why I think Goethe and Synge always said that. Well, I don't know if Synge said it directly, but in the Playboy of the Western World, he understood movement as a threat to the obesity of stricture in communities. So we're talking about movement here via language, which may be opening up human beings to other planes of wisdom, whatever language they may use. And certain languages are closer to this movement than others, and especially English is kind of in that sense, kind of, I could say, less of a flowing mechanism. But for me, it's like, because of the way that my neurons are structured, it continues to flow and hopefully connect with an audience that I don't know about. And so in other words, it's in that sense, it's non-literary, but we're talking about a non-literary understanding here. And just energy is language. And I'll finish with one other poem here. It's called Beginning After Existence. On the threshing floor, there are spiders which astonish, with replications which irradiate, which strike resistance, which terrify, which defoil carnivorous amoebas with each fiber, with each mandible, with each blood not gone astray, flailing, embryonic, shifting out of red or exerted magma, threading their weight throughout a melanotic angle into ghostly osmosis. I thank you.
Here's some sounds of applause. What to do?
It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was, I mean, I feel like it felt like a real collaboration, this reading, in a way that most readings maybe are also collaborations, but we just don't realize it as thoroughly as the telepathic collaboration that y'all have here. And I can see that both like in the work, as if you've already been doing it this whole time, but also, I mean, the ways that y'all's poetry connected was really amazing. So thank you.